Are you struggling to understand your business numbers? Are you wanting to take your business to the next level? Well, each week here on the Local Small Business Coach podcast, we dive into your business to help you not only understand the business numbers that matter, but we will discuss how to use them to increase your profits. Hi, I'm Tammy, and I'm on a mission to help our badass local business owners take their business to the next level. So if you're a badass or a badass in the making, let's get this party started. Hey, badass business owners, welcome back to the show. Let me ask you a question. If I was to line up 10 of your customers or potential customers, let's just say I randomly go in your town and I line up 10 people. And I line up these 10 people and I was to ask them what it is that you do. Would they know the answer? So the first hurdle you have to get over is, have they even heard of you? Do they even know who you are? So that's hurdle number one. The second one is, do they know what it is that you do? You know, a lot of times people will say something and it'll sound familiar to me, and I'll be like, it sounds familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. So it's that kind of feeling. And then there's going to be hopefully some people in that group that might go, oh, absolutely. That's Tommy and he's a landscaper or blah, blah, blah. But what I want to talk about is, how do we get over those hurdles? Part of the reason that people don't know about us is because we're confusing them. You know, they might have seen your vehicle, they might have seen your Google page, they might have seen your website, they might have heard people talk about you, which is where that familiarity comes in. But at the end of the day, they're not quite sure what it is that you do because you haven't really made a lasting impression. Now, a lot of times people think that they can't make a lasting impression if they haven't used you. How would they know what it is that you do, kind of a thing? But that's not true. There's a lot of businesses, you know what they do, even though you've never personally either gone to their business or used their services or whatever the case may be. Typically, the reason that people don't know what it is that we do is, yes, let's acknowledge the first one is they may never have heard of us. That's a topic for a different day. But I'm talking about folks that see you on a regular basis, that come across your information on a regular basis. When they don't know what it is that you do, there's a problem. And then there's this book. I know last week I talked about a book, and I'm not trying to shove books down you, but there are a handful of books that, you know, honest to God, there are very key and help you as a business owner. And this particular one, you can read the book, you can listen to the podcast that the guy does, you can read his website, you can do some of his online trade. There's all kinds of things that he's real popular right now out there. And his name is Donald Miller, and he does something called StoryBrand. And when he's talking about StoryBrand, what he's talking about is there's a story that we tell our potential customers and clients. And there's this arc very similar to movies. For example, those of you that are very good at knowing what comes next in the movie, it's because you've picked up the patterns of the movie. I do that all the time. If you go to the movies with me, I'm going to tell you who the killer is or what's going to happen or if they're going to break up or whatever the case may be. Because I'm programmed, my head is I've gotten used to the themes of the movie. Matter of fact, the only movie that really shocked me in the last 10 years was Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis and the little kid. You probably remember, I'm not going to spoil it if you've never seen that movie, but that one got me for some reason because it didn't follow the normal story in the way that it plays out. So that one got me. That was a good movie, if you will. But anyways, what I'm trying to say here is part of StoryBrand, I want to combine it with two things. Because one, I was really thinking about them, and I've had this note to talk about it for quite a while. And then the second thing is I was doing some training myself on someone else's program, and they started talking about something that was a very similar subject. And I kind of was putting the two pieces together and realizing that I really need to talk about this with you guys. I've talked about pieces of it at different times, and I think it's time that we come back and we revisit it. Okay. StoryBrand, part of what he says, he has a saying, and his saying is, if you confuse, you lose. And I think that's a concept that would benefit every single one of you guys. And we do it all the time. We confuse our customers on a constant basis. And part of it is we want to communicate to them all the different things that we can do. We want to throw at them the fact that that you can do 50 million things. Some of the worst people at this, by the way, are handymen. Yeah, I can do ceiling fans. I can repair drywall. I can fix plumbing leaks. I can fix electrical leaks. I can do this. I can do that. I can do this. I can do this. I can do that. The problem is if you don't ever really get to be known as the go-to person for something. All right. And if you've been a listener for a while, we've talked about this, is that you really need to try to narrow down something and what you communicate to people to core 1, 2, maybe 3 things that it is that you do. People will ask you about the other things that you do. It's the same thing with instead of trying to say, I serve everyone, even though that's true, you can serve everyone. There is a key person, a key avatar is what they call it, but a key ideal customer that you tend to serve. And the more you can fine tune your messaging into that core ideal customer, the more you can bring down the number of options and focus those options towards that key person. Basically, your business is going to grow because now you have a clear message and people know what it is that you do. Now, if you build an excellent reputation, and one I pick on all the time is, for example, is they're the water heater install guy. All right. If somebody becomes known in their town as the water heater install guy, that doesn't mean they don't do the other plumbing items. It doesn't mean that they're not a handyman, whatever is their chosen field. It just means that they get into the house, into the door, typically through the water heater process. And then while they're there, a lot of times people will go, oh, do you happen to do this? Or do you know somebody who does? Oh yeah, I can do that as well. You have the opportunity to expand it, but first you got to get your foot in the door. So if you can take your business and narrow it down into some key things that the majority of your business comes from, the easier it is for people to latch on to what it is that you do. For example, as a landscaper, yeah, you can mow lawns, you can do rock, you can do trees, you can do hardscapes, you can do all kinds of stuff. But you need to pick something to differentiate yourself from everybody else. Now, I want to go back to that concept of you confuse, you lose with a couple of different examples. There's this thing where, for example, when Home Depot started years and years ago, one of the things that always stood out, it was one of the very first big box retailers. And I remember when people originally, they don't do it now as much, but back then people would walk into a Home Depot, Lowe's, a Costco, there was Price Club at the time, and these big old warehouses, and they would just be in awe because of the size and how big it was and everything that was there. And, it created this, oh my God, I could get lost in here forever. Some of you still do it. For example, if you go to a Best Buy or someplace, like I love electronics, so sometimes I can go in there and I can just hang out in there. I don't have to buy anything. I can hang out in there and just look at everything that's in there. So it kind of created some of that. But part of what happened over the course of time, and I'm going to use a Home Depot example, is we realized that if we gave more options, we could become known as the go-to place for that option. And for example, let's take shovels. At one point in time, when we first started, we probably had, 3 or 4 shovels. And then people would come in and go, well, what about this shovel in a fiberglass handle? No problem. Next thing you know, hey, how about this handle with this type of special rubber on it? Okay, how about a pointy one? Okay, how about a short one? How about this? How about that? Pretty soon, our shovel mix went to like 20 plus 25 shovels. There were all of these shovels. Now, you would think that by going from 4 shovels to 20 some odd shovels, we are like the shovel king. We have every shovel known to man. Nobody would ever need to go to any other place. Just come buy a shovel at a Home Depot. You would think that that's what would happen. But the reality is the opposite starts to happen, because when we are faced as humans, when we are faced with multiple choices, guess what? We actually do the opposite. We actually can't make up our minds because now we're confused. Well, why does this shovel have this and why does this shovel have that? What's the difference? Have you ever went and bought something and you're looking at them, buying a laptop, same thing. They'll have them all lined up. You notice there's a lot less laptops when you go to buy one today than there used to be because you would used to read all the tags trying to figure out the difference. Why is this one $100 difference? I'm reading the tags and they, for the most part, seem like they're the same. Once again, creating confusion. When we have too many choices, we actually do the opposite. We start to think that we're going to make a mistake and we can't make up our mind. So if you go into, for example, Home Depot today, instead of having 2 bays of shovels, they're back down to 1 bay of shovel. There's been studies done that when people are presented with multiple choices, they can't decide. So, for example, that when they were, and I just read this one the other day, and I was listening to it rather. I don't remember what the product was, but they had a table that had 3 or 4 of an item on the table. And then they had another table in a different area that had 2 tables just full of tons of different options. And guess what? Yep, the one with fewer options did more sales. They did a lot more sales because there was less to sit there and try to figure out what they were going to be able to buy. Because I can make up my mind between 3 or 4 different items. It was much more difficult for somebody to make up their mind when they had 10 plus to do it. The reason that I mention this is we do this all the time in our local small business. Part of it is how we communicate what it is that we do. But I want you to think about further than that. There's other areas. For example, if you have a van, let's say you have a work van. Does your work van say 8, 10 different things on side of it as to everything that it is that you do? So a lot of people are guilty of that. There's people in my town that have that. Less is more. Pick 1 to 3 items and do it. The brain naturally, and part of going back to StoryBrand and pulling it back in, part of what he talks about is 3. 3 is the great items. People want to know what to do. They don't want to consume calories, as he says. And when they think and they have to think too hard, they all of a sudden start consuming too many calories and they just give up and they just don't want to make a decision. And if you think about it, I'll bet you've had that same thing that you have, especially when you're tired and you're worn down. How many times when someone's presenting you with an option, why do you think there's so many people when they get into that whole conversation of where do you want to eat? Okay. When we think about where do you want to eat, it's because there's so many places that people can choose from. They don't want to make a choice, but it's amazing when somebody says, well, let's go have Chinese. Nah, I don't want that. All right. Well, let's go have Mexican. Nah, I don't want that. Well, then let's go to McDonald's. Nah, I don't want that. We know what we don't want, but we don't know what it is we do want. Whereas if somebody went up to you, let's just stick with the fast food theme. If somebody went up to you and they said, do you want to have McDonald's, Jack in the Box, or Panda Express, one of those 3, and now it's easier for you to make a decision because you're only making a decision between those 3 items. You've made it easier for somebody because you've narrowed it down. Now, in some cases, those still aren't correct, but at the end of the day, for the majority of people, it's going to be able to help them make a decision 10 times faster. Same thing with your website. In StoryBrand, one of the things that he talks about is when you first log on to your website, is it very clear what it is that you do, who it is that you serve? Not when the minute they get on, all of a sudden, there's like 50 different people that you could potentially serve, that there's 50 different items that you do. There's one main thing that you do. I'm thinking of a home inspector right now whose website I was just recently on. The very first thing needs to be, he's a home inspector. He inspects homes, and the majority of his jobs are going to come from inspecting a home. However, he can do roof inspections. He can do, he can break that down, AC inspection. He can do all kinds of inspections if he wanted to. He can do commercial inspections, new builds. He can do all kinds of specialized things. But at the end of the day, the main thing he's known for is home inspectors, being a home inspector. So it's homes. So the very first thing needs to be there. And what's the next step? What's the next thing that they need to do? Do they need one? Yes. This is the number that you call so that you can get it set up. If somebody wants to know if they do other stuff, they continue scrolling down the page. So think about your website. Are you hitting them with too many options and then they can't make a decision and they move on? your Google page. Do you have too many things? Be specific what it is that you serve, one or two things. Later, you can go ahead and get them over to your website, then over to your other services that you offer, and be able to do that. Same thing on your Facebook page. You know what? When you're doing Facebook messaging, when you're doing posts in Facebook, because we know that's the cheapest way for you to be able to do some advertising, are you hitting them with something different every single day? You know what? That can be confusing after a while, because then they don't really get to connect you to what it is that you do. So you need to pick a theme and use that theme as what it is that you are putting out there. People, when they respond, will ask you, hey, by the way, do you also do this? Then you can get specific into their specific need, but you want to become known as that one thing. Now, hopefully this is making some sense, okay? The main thing I want you to do is I want you to start pulling it back a little bit. That if you have been in an attempt, and by the way, we tend to do this when we're trying to generate sales. We tend to throw out everything in the kitchen sink because we want something to stick. We want something to resonate with somebody so that they'll use us. And I'm telling you that the more you continue to throw everything out there, you're going to stop your sales. You're going to stunt their growth, if you will. I want you to pick 1 to 3 things, and I want you to just focus on those 1 to 3 things, and you're going to find that your business is going to start to grow because you're not making them have to think as much. Think of the KISS method. Have you heard of that? The KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. All right. Keep it simple, silly, whatever. Everybody's got something different with that last word. But the main thing is, don't make them have to think so hard about what it is that you do. Don't make them think so hard about how you can serve them and what it is that you can do. You need to find what that main pain point are. 1 or 2, no more than 3 pain points that you solve for the majority of your work that you want to focus on. And that's what you want to be communicating to people is keep it simple. Don't make them have to overthink what it is that you do. Remember, if you confuse, you lose. And if you want to test it, just try other people that don't know what it is that you do and have them look at your website and ask them, hey, what is this? Look at this website and tell me what it is you think that I do. You know, have people give you that feedback. Just make sure that they're going to give you honest feedback as to what it is. You know what? If you run into people, have them say, hey, can you do me a favor? Stop and say, have them look at your truck and say, I'm just doing a survey, trying to test something. When you look at this truck, what it is that you think that I do? Okay, I guess you're a handyman. You kind of got a bunch of stuff on there, as opposed to, oh, you're the water heater king. You see how different that just one, they don't have to think. The other one, we're making them think and they're having to read through it all and whatnot. So I want you to start thinking about different ways that you can basically pull things back a little bit. Focus on 1 to 3 things. What is it that the message you're going to put out there for people? Now, one of the things I came across in that training that I was doing, there was this quote, and I really, really liked it. And I wanted to end with it here. And it is, instead of screaming to the masses, I want you to whisper to the right people. Instead of screaming to the masses, whisper to the right people. And that was very powerful when I started hearing it, because it really does say that that's what we do, right? We try to scream to everybody what it is that we do and use me, pick me, as opposed to saying, hey, this is my ideal customer. This is who I really want to target. This is how I'm going to get myself in the door with people, and focus on that. And you're going to serve the right people. You're going to take away that confusion. You're going to give them less options. It's not that you don't do any of those things. It's not that you don't offer those things, but don't make it hard for them to use your business, and don't make it confusing. We want them to remember who you are, so that way when they're ready, you're the first person that they call. Okay? Remember, you confuse, you lose. And if you want to learn more about it, it's called Story Brand, and it's by Donald Miller, and it's a fantastic book. I am not doing it justice at all when it's on here, because I'm kind of putting 2 things together. But the message of you confuse, you lose is a wonderful one. And I want you to think about your business and how you're confusing your customers by giving them way too many options. You need to pull those options down. Think in the power of 3. It needs to be 3 or less. And they did, part of what he talks about also is this whole, how they've done a test that the more options, the less likely they are to make that decision, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. So it's something really important for you to kind of keep in mind. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up. I think it's a very important topic for each of you guys. Start putting some thought to it and asking yourself, are you confusing your potential customers and clients? Focus that down, pull that down, niche it down. Not that you can't do or offer those items, but then you need to become known for something instead of for everything. All right. Maybe that's the best way to do it. Become known for something and not for everything. All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. You guys get out there, go kick some ass. Have a wonderful week. Bye for now. Hey, badass business owners, before you go, just one thing. If you ever feel like you're alone and you would love to be with a like-minded group of individuals, head on over to our Badass Local Small Business Owner Facebook page. We have no spamming, no advertising, anything like that. Just your questions, mine, and we just kind of help each other out, grow our businesses, and share knowledge. You can feel free to know that you're in a safe place and ask your questions of people that are actually going to care about you. So once again, head on over to Facebook. It's the Badass Local Small Business Owner page. You can also hit the show notes and it's right there. Once again, it's going to be stuff and people out there that care about you and helping you grow your business.